Hi, I'm Mike Baker and welcome to National Arts. We're here in Shepherdstown, the oldest town in the state of West Virginia and home of the Contemporary American Theater Festival. Each summer, the festival produces 6 new plays and rotating repertory. On this program, we'll meet the festival founder, Ed Herendeen. We'll also take a glimpse at 5 of the 6 new shows, and we'll meet an equity actor or two. Let's get started. Ed, welcome to the program and congratulations on one of the most successful theater festivals in America.
Well, thank you for those kind words. It's a pleasure to be here.
One asks the question, in 1991-92, what started it all? Was it an inspiration perhaps to bring theater here to Shepherdstown? What actually started it?
You know, it's a pretty longer story than that, but I was hired by the then Shepherd College to come down as a consultant. I was at the Williamstown Theater Festival in the Berkshires in Western Massachusetts, and they were interested in starting a professional theater during the summertime on the campus, because it was a quiet campus, but yet located close to major, Baltimore, Washington, D.C. metro region. And so they liked sort of the relationship that Williams College and the Williamstown Theater Festival, which is a professional theater, had, and so they were looking at a model like that. So I came down for a couple of days, and one thing led to another when we got around to talking about what kind of theater would they like to do, and they seemed like they might have been interested in Shakespeare or something like that during the summer, and we talked about how many contracts, equity contracts, a Shakespeare play would have, because they're large cast shows. And they said, well, what do you think we should do? And one of the answers I had was, especially in 1991, there was a critical need for full productions, full professional productions of new work. New work was getting a lot of attention in workshops and readings, but it was difficult to see new work being fully produced. And when it was, like say in the regional theater world, they would produce one new play in their season a year. So there was a real need to develop new plays. And so I said, why don't you do a contemporary theater that develops new work? You're the academy. You're what better place to create the future of literature for the stage than here at a college with professional actors, and launch that into the world and create the future of the American theater.
What? Well, isn't that kind of what happened?
Isn't what kind of what happened?
Well, after what you said.
You told them we broke up?
What else was I supposed to conclude?
It was an argument.
It was pretty definitive.
Because you walked out. Had I known you were going to continue it without me, I would have tried harder to keep up.
Okay, fine.
Okay, fine. What are you talking about? Did we? Are you breaking up with me? Should I ask them?
Can we talk about this tomorrow?
Fuck that. I haven't seen you in an hour. We've already broken up. By tomorrow, you might be married to someone else.
So you didn't break up?
No.
Basically.
Lynn.
What do you want from me?
I want us to go somewhere and have a rational conversation that I'm there for.
No.
No?
I'm not going anywhere. You have something you want to say to me, say it in front of my best friends.
At that particular time, we had languished somewhat from the great playwrights. There was this lull. And so you came along at a time where you helped this whole new contemporary theater movement blossom, didn't you?
Well, you could say that timing is everything. We also came along in the state of West Virginia. Once again, we're 60 miles from the nation's capital, 60, 70 miles from one of the, and even less if you look at Montgomery County, to one of the largest metropolitan regions in the United States. Millions of people live just a few miles away, and they're highly educated. Washington has a great history of theater going. So that was already in place. Shepherdstown was a destination, a historical destination, because of its architecture and its location on the banks of the Potomac River, near Civil War battlefields. And there was also a new governor in West Virginia who was really focused on tourism as one of West Virginia's great resources for the future. So we came along at a great time to start a professional theater when West Virginia was also interested in promoting the state, wild, wonderful West Virginia, as well as that we could ultimately become the cultural gateway into the great state. So timing was great. The stars aligned. I don't know why. And there was a need for new work. And there was an audience nearby. And now that audience has grown into 38 states now and some international traffic, because there is an adventurous appetite for plays that haven't been produced before.
You pick the plays, and you filter through hundreds in order to find.
Yeah, 115 this year. Yeah.
In order to find things that not only work together, where actors can share experiences and repertory, but also some that make a statement. And as I look at everything this year, I get a sense that you were going for the human experience, some form of positive resolution, some form of hopefulness. That's what shouted at me. Am I close?
Well, it's great to hear that that's what you got out
Yeah.
of it. I can honestly say I take a lot of pitches from literary agents. I only do literary agent submissions. I read this year, I have a notebook that shows that probably I read about 115 scripts, but mostly it's in the pitch with the literary agents that I go around to the agencies in New York in the fall. I never go into a season with a theme or a main idea or any kind of connective thing that that these plays would have, but it almost happens naturally because when your goal is, your mission is so specific, we are dedicated to producing and developing new American theater. All of the plays I'm looking at and taking pictures of and meeting with writers and meeting with agents and reading manuscripts have all been written most of the time within the last year. So this is what's been on the mind of these writers that I've been reading. And then when you finally get down to 12, it's a little bit more of an economic thing. How many contracts can I do these 6 plays with? Which 6 plays in what venue? We have 3 venues. So to see a play like Chester Bailey and Antonio in this small, intimate 99-seat theater feels right, you know. It would be a very different play if it was in the 400-seat proscenium. So those are the things I'm playing with. I haven't really thought about how these plays connect. But once I pick the season, and I really do just pick the plays that I want to do. In fact, I'll go further than that. I only produce work that I'm compelled to produce. So the plays have to be immediate, they have to be present, they have to speak to me in relevant ways, they have to matter. And that's what I think contemporary art does. It's about the now. I want to be hit in the gut first, then I want to be moved emotionally. So when that happens, like when I'm reading the manuscript to Antonio's song, I Was Dreaming of a Son, and on page 3, I actually have to put the script down and look up with my headset on, because I put sort of the Bose noise cancellation things just so I can sort of be in the zone reading the play. And I have to put the script down and go, oh my God, can I finish this play? Will the audience even stay? And then I begin to, that's already saying I've been moved in some way, provoked, that I know I'm going to keep reading. I'm so glad I did, because the play is so powerful and so important.
Space, time became one, and I'm watching him. I'm moving with him, praying that none of the family comes home early. And the person I'm watching is Baryshnikov. Misha. Now, later that week, I went to the library to find out about him. And there was an interview. Baryshnikov, said that he was interested in all kinds of things. And the interviewer called him a citizen of the world. And I love that. I wanted that too. I wanted to be a part of all, to be a part of it all. To just be. I kept watching Baryshnikov, Misha, and I kept thinking about my family. And I'm thinking about what it means, what it all means. Family, being a man. And as I watched Baryshnikov, I thought about all this. And as I watched him move, I thought he had a soap pop, but he also had a grace. And I thought how to do it all. Boy, girl, woman, man, Latin, black, Irish. How do I, like him, become a citizen of the world?
So that's where I am then. Interesting that this year, I would say I did receive, you know, because you say, what's on the mind of a writer that's writing within the last year? And topics over the last several years, religion has been a big topic.
Yes.
Whatever religion is, whatever denomination is, it doesn't matter. That zealotry, ideology, all of the different things that maybe are in some sort of religious life, you know, whatever religion we're talking about, plays. There are writers who are interested in religions and people that follow them as groups and maybe even fanatically follow some. And then we start to even look at religions that might be dangerous and blah, blah, blah. That's been going on for several years, and you can answer why do you think that is. Economic, domestic life, you know, people who are you know, living under poor economic conditions. For 29 years I've been reading plays that has sparked things like domestic violence and the American Dream. I go all the way back to Sam Shepard. You know, Sam Shepard was obsessed with sort of just really exposing, I'm getting off here, but exposing the American Dream experience, you know. And that's been, it hasn't just been now that that's happening, but you know, the discussion on racism has really been around. But it seems like it's more in the air, as we all would agree, than ever. So to read a historical piece like My Lord, What a Night, about the relationship between Marian Anderson and Albert Einstein, and to see her get turned away from this prestigious university hotel, the Nassau Inn, because it was a whites-only hotel. Who would have ever known that? I didn't know that. And to say, oh my God, this is a period play written this year. Okay, this play needs to be witnessed, it needs to be heard. So I'm drawn to that kind of work. And then I saw a lot of work come my way, a lot of manuscripts that had this need to get even and revenge. And then I had this other work that wasn't doing that, you know, and I don't know if I consciously avoided the revenge plays, and they have a real reason, some of these plays, why they want to get even and the revenge. But the plays that I seemed to be drawn to had empathy and compassion, which I hope that doesn't mean I'm getting soft this year, because I do like aggressive theater. I do like provocative theater, and these plays are still provocative. But there seemed to be a need in me to tell compassionate stories in the midst of the hate-filled rhetoric that we're hearing surrounding our society today.
I liken the season to past, present, and future. The past, of course, being My Lord.
Yeah.
And how apropos the discussions of anti-Semitism and racism, so in the fore today,
So sad.
play themselves out on stage, and to see our legacy and see, yes, we've come far, but not far enough.
You know, I'm stealing this quote, and I wish I could attribute it to somebody. You know, we often hear history repeats itself, but somebody turned that around and said, no, history doesn't repeat itself. We repeat history. And it's just so very sad. I wish we weren't doing that play. I wish there wasn't a need to tell the Marian Anderson, Albert Einstein story. I wish there wasn't a need to expose Princeton University in 1937 and 1939. And of course, the Act Two brings up a whole nother contemporary issue with Einstein feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders after he's met with the Hungarian physicists who have discovered how to split the atom, and that the Nazis were also trying to figure out how to build a bomb. That, to me, is the most chilling moment in the play, set alongside racism. Same time, same conversation, two things happening, and we're in the same place. We're talking about
exactly.
nuclear weapons now.
Everyone must from time to time make a sacrifice on the altar of stupidity. I did so thoroughly tonight. I got carried away. I apologize.
Thank you.
So please, don't leave.
I'd much prefer to stay here than the colored YMCA.
So, you'll stay?
Yes, I'll stay.
Oh. With fame, I become more and more stupid. Right, Flexner?
Well, I won't disagree with you on that.
We talk about the play Wrecked and how it deals with contemporary relationships, and of course I've interviewed the actors.
Yeah.
It is a wonderful play. It's very funny.
Yeah.
And yet it deals with a very serious subject of what would you do?
and that's why I call it, I was drawn to I'm actually drawn to morality plays that force me into an ethical situation where I have to ask that ethical dilemma. What would I do if this happened to me? And I hope it makes, and so if I'm squirming reading it, then I hope that involves the audience, that they're squirming a little bit of, going through that and saying, well, what would you have done if this happened to you? And if you can make it that personal, you've really got the audience right where you want them. Greg Caleres, who wrote that play, is a really gifted artist, and his gift for dialogue, I mean, that is one of those for a new play, in its first production, in its early, I read 2 drafts of it before we got to the draft that we're doing now. To have it that tight, even in its early drafts, that dialogue is just, he knows how to write dialogue, he knows what he wants to say, and yes, at its surface, he would say, this is a relationship play, and it truly is, but I love that idea of how to get your story straight.
Yes.
And what memory does, and what's your story. We could tell each other the same story. We could have had the same experience, and we'll have 2 different stories. So it's a really fascinating, and to be able to do it as a serial comedy, if you want to give it a label, to be able to do it where it's funny until it's not. That's a signature theater festival play.
These are my friends, okay? And it's late in the night, and these are good and true people.
Why are you talking like a pilgrim?
Just please go.
I'm gonna tell you how batshit you are.
No, because let me tell you, my friends have been in an accident, and they need me.
No, it's nothing. We hit a dog.
It may have wanted to die.
I'm sorry. Lynn, let's get out of here, okay?
And then what?
And then we talk like normal people.
You've done enough talking for one night, thank you.
Well, I didn't really get a chance to explain, did I?
What's to explain?
Officer Friedman! You're Officer Friedman!
Yeah.
From the play, honey. The Jewish cop.
Hey, right!
He's an actor!
Oh, of course he is.
What? You thought?
Well, we were.
Jesus, man, I thought you were being weird.
Yeah, that's just with the uniform and all the questions.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Antonio's song. You went through a lot of plays before you found that one. And of course, Antonio also was the co-playwright of that piece. That's an epic story of struggle, isn't it?
And so Dale's words are so poetic and lyrical, they dance off the page.
And lucky happenstance. You know, the unexpected. It's part of theater, isn't it?
Yeah.
And how it shapes one.
Yep.
Would you have ever thought at the beginning this man would go to Harvard?
That's what's beautiful about it. I mean, since the festival's over and we're talking about these plays, it's one of the great many, all of these plays, the 6 that we're doing, have these great sort of twists and turns in it. But it's a moment that brings you to tears in a different way. You know, you're proud as an audience member when he tells you that part of the story.
Yeah.
Because he's been able to, the character, and of course, Antonio Wood Suarez, the actor doing it, is able to allow us into his life in such a way that we care about him. And that's a gift that we suddenly find ourselves caring about this man on stage.
There's another part of me that's saying, dang, I'm scared. Yet there's another part of me that's saying, I'm alone. Damn, I feel so alone. And I was just trying to be, but not knowing what that was. To be me.
I love support group.
Good.
I thought it was something that I had never seen before. You don't get to see a sensitivity session among men.
Yeah, written by a woman.
Yeah, and when men get together, they talk about politics and sports, sometimes money, but never about their feelings. And we get to share this sensitivity session on stage. It is very revealing, and how different parts of the male and female interplay, it is really lovely, with the outside world intervening at all times, trying to keep men from becoming better selves. I mean, it's all beautiful.
And if we knew more about Chicago, and this is where the playwright was very instrumental, and that neighborhood is changing. She's writing about a neighborhood, Wrigleyville, where it's Boys Town and the Wrigleyville neighborhood coming together, and gentrification coming in, and sports bars. So that world is already changing, and she then sets her play in that changing world where the characters are in a world that's changing, how to talk about the different things, the issues that they're trying to figure out.
And-
It's
yeah.
really, really cool.
They're all prototypical males in some way.
Yeah.
They're all different.
I think, you know, when it begins, I think you can almost go, oh, I know what this is about. It's going to be a bunch of guys acting like jerks, you know, right from the beginning. And it takes you in a whole
Yeah.
other path. And go back to that compassion and empathy that I was talking about. I wouldn't have done this play if it was just making fun of guys and exposing them as jerks, say, because, you know, there's certainly enough of that we could expose. But the fact that she takes them on a journey where they become, especially the main character and the young man, find themselves in a friendship now that is full of empathy and compassion and understanding. And who would have thought that ever would these two people ever sit down and talk to one another? And they do.
Yeah.
All right. We are in a sacred space of safety. We are brothers. We are men. We only talk when we have the stick. Our feelings are our own. We do not give advice or comment on other people's feelings or situations. We are only here to bear witness.
I, Running Buffalo.
It's great.
You also directed Guest in addition to My Lord, and Guest, I love Guest. I did a little reading on the playwright's intent, at least initial intent, as being perhaps the Palestinian-Israeli struggle.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you start to break it down, and everything from the Dead Sea Scrolls and the West Bank. I mean, it does break down that way, and one can begin to understand it. But it really is earth-shattering. No pun intended.
Well, that's great. I mean, it is what you know, I often say you bring to the work who you are when you come into the room. And we, the artists, Michael Weller and us, we bring ourselves into this. So it can be many, many different
Yes.
metaphors. When he comes out of that upstage doorway and comes in his blue suit, I see Putin coming down the
Yeah.
stairs. When he comes down there, I see Wall Street coming down the
Yes.
stairs. When he began with a different language and a different
Yes.
costume, and he emerges and becomes more westernized. It all depends on what you see when you talk about dominion and power and patriarchal society. So Michael's got a lot in there, and then you could say, yes, this is about, an occupied country and the occupier and the people that live there, and if a religious book says, no, this is mine, it could be any of that, so yeah, and it could be very specific. I'm sure some people could read right in it what you just said, what Michael's saying, is this Israel and Palestine. But for me, I think it goes way beyond that.
It does.
You know.
It could be the land after the conflagration.
That's right.
And how we reshape
Well,
ourselves.
it's set in the future.
Yeah.
It's set in
Yeah.
the future. And you have this thing called the natural Christians who are in this band, and they don't want a guest to be in their space. I mean,
No.
isn't that kind of not whatever that group is called, Christians, aren't they supposed to like you?
Yeah.
That was in the
Absolutely.
rule book.
Believe
He suffered a series of tragic events, didn't you, new person? He needs shelter and understanding. Oh, do you enjoy caramel popcorn?
I'll show you the door. He's staying here, Mac.
Don't be such a grumpy McWumpus, it's Christmas.
Me and Stupid are out for the night, so whatever.
I vote with Pop.
We have enough food, we can find a corner for him somewhere. Oh, don't mind my husband, his bark is worse than his growl.
Does he talk?
He suffered a profound blow. He needs time to self-regulate.
Oh, it's okay, Mr. Shimmy. Oh, you're safe with us.
The agents know sort of now's a good time to send me some stuff. Now, the other thing that happens too is I had other scripts that I was compelled to do but could only do 6. So I'm looking at those. In fact, earlier today I was going back over those notes saying, I'm going to go back to some of these scripts that I really was interested in, but it didn't fit this year, to take a look of, well, where are they? Let's take a look at some of the ones and why I thought I liked them a year ago that are still unproduced. And then in September, I'll make the rounds in New York, and I'll go from boutique agencies to the big agencies like William Morris and Paradigm and Gersh and Creative Artist Agency, and sit down with the lit agents and hear about who they think I should be reading this year.
Don't leave.
I'd much prefer to stay here than the colored YMCA.
You'll stay?
Yes, I'll stay.
Oh. With fame, I become more and more stupid.
Yeah.
Right, Flexner?
Well, I won't disagree with you on that, you understand?
Thank you for joining us on National Arts. I hope you enjoyed meeting Ed Herendeen, founder of the Contemporary American Theater Festival, and some of the 2019 cast. Until next time, remember, art was meant to be appreciated, so you be a part of it.